We operate a number of programs jointly with the United Community Housing Coalition. The most recent set of programs involved assisting families in tax foreclosure in Detroit. We started this program about 7 years ago, and initially we were working with about 1,700 occupied homes in tax foreclosure. This year the number has ballooned to 8,420. What we found startling in this process was that there is a process that the county collects the taxes and sends the homes into foreclosure. The county actually pays the city for the taxes that are due, and then the county is the collecting agent for the city. And there is a process by which a family can get a 1-year extension on the taxes. But in order to do that, they have to prove they live in the home. And the proof requires producing a utility bill. We were amazed at the number of households who could not produce utility bills. For many years, many households would transfer the bills from perhaps one household member to another when the utilities were shut off so that there would be a new customer. But it had reached a point in the extended families that there was no one else who could put the utility bill in their name. And so we dealt with thousands of families who came in without lights. We call it the triple shutoffs, without lights, gas, or water. Water bills are not in the name of the family. The water bills run with the property. But many, many households who could not produce a utility bill in their name. And so we began advocating with the county treasurer to produce other methods of proof that they would accept so that there could be a 1-year extension in tax foreclosure. Families that are in tax foreclosure are there because they don't have mortgages on their homes. So these are very often among the poorest of the poor because they can't, the tax bill may range anywhere from $500 to $5,000. In the last year, in order to also collect water bills, the city of Detroit decided to transfer water bills onto the tax liens. The cities of Highland Park and Hamtramck had been doing that for many years. We, for example, worked with a family in Highland Park that had a $30,000 water bill transferred to the tax liens. The water affordability program, when it was initiated a couple of years ago in Detroit, included a $5 million set aside to help Detroit households. As near as we can tell, very little of that has been spent. We've been asking for an audit of it. I think $400,000 was spent. The reason now is that water bills, when they're not paid for a couple of months, are transferred onto the tax liens, and the family now gets a water bill showing that the new arrearage is zero. In fact, we've had family members come in surprised and delighted that somebody paid their water bill. What they don't know is that they're about to lose their home. And what they also don't know is that now they can no longer tap that $5 million set aside because they're not in shutoff and they don't have an arrearage. So the program that was developed has been essentially useless at this point. So in terms of efforts to fix the problem, from the perspective of the families who were relying on the Detroit Water Affordability Program, it's essentially meaningless at this point, and it just got underway a couple of years ago. With respect to the utility shutoffs, there's virtually nothing there. The state has a program called State Emergency Relief, and it will pay up to $1,100, $550 per utility for families in shutoff. But DTE takes the position that if that will not cure the problem, they will not, once it's shut off, they will not restore service. They need the family to be able to come up with the rest. I can tell you that in the late 80s, there was a program that the then director of the Department of Human Services utilized to bargain with the then utility providers, Detroit Edison and Michigan Consolidated. You may know that when we had an Aid to Families with Dependent Children program, the old AFDC program, families could vendor a set portion of their income to pay a utility bill. For a single person with a child, it might be $70 a month for electric and gas. When the Engler administration took office, prior to this, the way the program worked was families could enroll in the vendor program, and it didn't matter what their utility usage was. At the end of the year, the then director, C. Patrick Babcock of the Department of Human Services, understood the power of the state, and he understood that at the end of the year he could negotiate on behalf of all these families and their arrearages as though they were in bankruptcy to essentially eliminate the arrearage. So he might pay pennies on the dollar for the utility bill, but in the end, the family would at least go into the next heating season with a zero balance. When the Engler administration took office, it eliminated that program. First of all, there were no caps on utility arrearage, no caps on utility vendoring, so that and they also cut the benefit rate, so that the utility could require the family to vendor virtually all of their income. And in many cases, there wasn't enough income to pay the utility bill. There was a statement earlier about the family members who were struggling to survive on SSI income. A supplemental security income is less than $700 per month. So when we had the example of the woman who tried an alternative method of paying for an alternative utilities service provider and was told she was going to be paying $650 a month, obviously, on an SSI income, that's not doable. When the Engler administration ended that program, families began to accumulate significant arrearages that were carried from year to year. And so very quickly, they were $5,000 behind in utilities. And we, within a year, saw families coming in with enormous arrearages, $12,000 to $15,000 in arrearages that they couldn't possibly pay and that they were required to pay in order to restore utility service. So I also want to say that the Michigan Public Service Commission not only does it approve the rate increases requested by the utility providers, but it also governs the circumstances under which utilities can be terminated. And it really, over whether there's been a Democratic or a Republican governor in office who appoints the Michigan Public Service Commission, really the rules have changed very little over the years. There is a provision that allows for a 21-day extension on a shutoff, which can be renewed twice after the first 21-day extension for medical reasons. But I have seen representatives of DTE reject doctor letters as not detailed enough to provide for the 21-day extension while there were efforts to restore service, other efforts to develop to tap resources to restore services. But the resources really aren't there. A few years ago, the state was paying up to $1,500 for both utilities. And with state budget cuts and cuts in public assistance programs, the state emergency relief program, which is entirely state funded, there's been very little money available. And so the amount that's available to solve the problem has been reducing on an annual basis.